Hey Tyers, Darren here, back with another fly tying tutorial. Today we're going to be tying a pattern from author and guide and fly tyer Zimmerman. This one's called the Backstabber. This is a pretty simple guide fly, and this is one that Zimmerman came up with as he was tying some articulated flies for a series of bass flies that he was tying. On the trailer hook that he was using, it was just basically a piece of Marabou, but he liked the look of it and thought, hey, why not turn this into a fly for carp? So over the next couple of years, he fished and modified the fly a few times until you get what you see here. So it's basically a little bit of Marabou for movement. It doesn't have to necessarily be movement or Marabou. It could be fox hair or Angora sheep or any kind of material with a lot of movement in it. So let's have a look at the material list and get started. Let's get a fresh hook in the vise. I'm using an anti-snag carp hook. This is a European brand. It's a nice heavy hook. Zimmerman uses the Gamakatsu SL45, which is a decent hook. I have one here you can have a look at for comparison. It's got a bit different shape. It's a bit finer wire and a little bit longer shank. I like this one here. It gives a bit of a tighter profile, and I like the heavier wire helps get that hook down a little bit more as well. So I'm going to use a 6/0 black thread. And we're just going to start by putting on our thread at the head, and then we're going to wind back into the bend a little bit, probably just over top of the barb there, and come back just forward of the hook point, and we're going to tie in a set of brass eyes. And these, I think, are 4mm size. So I just like to do under wraps and then cross wraps, a few each direction, and then just kind of hold the eyes and snug that thread. Just want to be careful you don't put too much pressure on it, so you can break the thread pretty easily there. So I've seen a number of different variations of this fly. Today we're going to be tying a pretty dark colored one, and I ended up making my own dubbing for this. So basically what I did is I'll put a link in the description here how to make your own dubbing, but I used a Superfly diamond dub, and I used one of the peacock colors. I think this one's the bronze olive. And I also put in a little bit of seal fur just to give it a little bit more firmness. And then the base of this, it's probably about 75% black acrylic wool, just chopped up. So this is enough for maybe 100 flies or so. So I'll put a link in the description how you can make your own. In the original pattern, Zimmerman, he calls for Dave Whitlock's SLF in the Helgramite color. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a dubbing loop. I've got my dubbing spinner, so I'll just hook that in, and I'll give myself a few inches. And we're just going to tie that loop off. Make sure you go on both sides just so it's secure there. And then we're going to advance our thread up to the other side. Let that hang there for a second. I'm going to take a pinch of dubbing. So I should also note that you probably don't need the dubbing loop if you want to just do a regular dubbing on there. But I like the dubbing loop. It makes the dubbing stand out a little bit better. So I'm just going to take this pinch and I'm just going to start by pulling out a few fibers, and I'm just going to load them into the dubbing loop. And then for the next one, I'll just do that again until I fill up my loop. And I'll just show you the loop here. You can see it's a little bit clumpy in spots, so I'm just going to take a minute and kind of distribute that dubbing along the length of it. And near the top, you probably want to have it a little bit more sparse. Alright, so now we're going to spin our loop. Just a little bit slow at first. And then I'm going to take my whip finish tool, and I'm just going to come along and pick out some of that dubbing. You take a brush here if you want. I find the brush tends to miss the dubbing in here, and just that point in the whip finish tool really picks stuff out nicely. So let's do a combination of both. With the brush, you kind of get any of the loose stuff that's going to come off anyways. There you got a nice dubbing brush. Alright, so let's go ahead and wrap that. Just find it easier to lay it on the side there, just when I'm getting that dubbing loop done. And like I do with a lot of my materials, as I'm wrapping that, I'm kind of palmering it back. I'm going to give this another brush once we have everything wrapped up. Yeah, so when we get up to the eyes here, I'm going to take a wrap under and under and over and over, just to kind of do a figure eight under there. And then we'll close that off up here. It's pretty tight. And we'll just clean up those wraps. Just gonna come through, give that another comb. So anything where you got these really long fibers, I'm just gonna cut those down a little bit. Save that for another fly. Now we're gonna flip this upside down. We're going to take this piece of Marabou here. So you don't have to limit yourself to Marabou. You can use Arctic fox or Icelandic sheep or any kind of feather or hair that's going to flow nicely in the current. So what I've done is I've just taken hackle fibers off, or Marabou fibers off one side, and we're going to tie this in 2 clumps. So I'm going to extend that past the end of the hook, almost at hook length. It's a little bit easier if you just make that a little wet just to help tame it. We'll put 2 wraps in there to hold that in place. And we're going to come and do that with the other side as well. Just going to match that up. You come in here and trim that out. Take a couple wraps just to clean up those butt ends. I'm going to add a hackle to this using I think this is a Chinese henback. Got a nice one if you've got something natural like a Brahma works well, or an olive dyed female partridge is good as well. Something that's a little bit on the dark side with some light tones in there works well. So I'm just going to strip a few fibers off the bottom. We'll create a tie-in point. Just going to put that back up where it's a little bit easier to tie. Throw in a couple wraps, bend that back. Pull the tip, and we're just going to take our scissors, run that along the back edge of that feather. I'm going to palmer that around. Alright, let's grab our whip finish tool, add a few wraps to clean that up. And we'll add a second whip finish. There we go. Zimmerman's Backstabber. Thanks for stopping by my fly tying channel and watching my tutorials. If you're new here and like this sort of thing, why not hit that subscribe button? I'd love to hear from you, so if you have anything to say, leave it in the comments below. Until next time, this is Darren saying, keep a hook in your vise. Cheers.